Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 97 of Coffee Time. I'm your host, Byron. This is weird, going almost 100. Holy crap. Where am I going with this? Who knows? Well, anywho, alongside me right now on YouTube, live, and available next day on all podcasting apps Anchor, Spotify, Google, you name it. And now, if you have Alexa, you can say coffee time with Byron, and I'm on there as well. Just new, but I'm glad to have you again. It's been a long time since the last time you were on my old podcast. Former NHL player Jim Thomson. Thank you for joining me again. It's been a long time since we last spoke.
It's been a long time, Byron. It's been a long time. It's nice to see you again.
Same. So, what have you been up to since the last time we spoke on the old podcast?
Well, I've been, I own a junior A hockey team. If you remember the Aurora Tigers, so we just started our playoffs this season for the end of the season. We're down one game to nothing against Collingwood Blues. We got to win tomorrow night, and just been mentoring, helping kids, and doing lots of good things behind the scenes, helping people. So very rewarding, Brian. Very rewarding.
So, is that ultimately what you ended up wanting to do after you retired? Was ended up like coaching kids to help them where they want to be ultimately is in the NHL? Is that what you wanted to do after you wanted to retire?
Well, it's a good question. It started that way when I started my hockey school. It was like, okay, the end result is train these kids, get them to the highest level possible, and obviously the ultimate goal would be get to the top of the mountain of the NHL. And as the
Yeah.
years went on, Brian, I realized that there was more value in mental health and all these things that we're dealing with today. That my value really wasn't the end result of helping a kid. Obviously, getting to pro hockey is a wonderful thing and a great thing. But what we're finding out through the COVID era and even before that is so many young people are struggling with mental health and anxiety and all these different things. I found myself doing much more work on the mentoring and inspiring, if you will. So that's what I've really been busy with. I still go on the ice. I still do teaching and all that sort of thing, which I love to do. But, since we last talked, I've really moved over into, helping people with addiction. I'm 15
Right.
years sober myself. So a
Right.
lot of different things that way.
Yeah, congratulations. And I like your shirt by the way. I believe isn't that a
Thank you.
rock group? Isn't that a rock group?
It's Bob Marley, I believe it is, isn't it?
I can't tell. It
Yeah.
looks like it. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, and congratulations to you for that. 15, like you said, 15 year. You said like 15 years sober.
Yeah, just
So,
entered my 15 year and
so congrats to that. So obviously, I got to get into that now, then, because like you said, you've been 15 years sober, which is congratulations to you. So exactly how are you helping out the kids? Are you going to are you like talking at schools? What are you doing to help out with this to help get kids over their addiction like you did, or adults for that
so
matter?
yeah, a lot of adults. It's not just kids. I deal with a lot of families, a lot of individuals, driving them to rehab, doing many interventions. But basically, in that area, Brian, it's word of mouth. You help one person, they refer you to another family and another family. That's kind of that how that angle works. And then obviously, like you said, I do a lot of speaking at, whether it's for schools, rehab centers, hockey teams. I go around the country speaking to different hockey teams. I have a PowerPoint presentation called Career Killers.
Mm.
And what it is, it's a whole bunch of PowerPoint slides with stories, true stories of how not to mess number one, your career up, number two, your life. So yeah, that's very rewarding. So yeah, I'm very busy on the road and helping a lot of different groups and individuals out that way.
So you were selected one. 185th overall in the 84 draft by the Capitals. Now, that's kind what it would, in today's had to be what, the second or third round. Did you think you were going to go a little bit higher up in the draft, or did you know that's where exactly you were going to be in the draft? Because I know nowadays they tell you where you're going to go. Did they tell you back then where you were going to end up?
Yeah, they had the same kind of system back then, and I was rated higher than what I went. That's just when a lot of the Europeans started, coming in to the NHL. So what happens there is, guys who really weren't on the radar get drafted. Obviously, everybody gets pushed down. So, disappointment, no. Hearing my name, getting the call from Jack Button and the late Jack Button of the Washington Capitals that they drafted me in the ninth round. I was part of my dream had come true, and I still hadn't played. But hearing that I got drafted to the NHL was just an amazing. It was something I'll never forget. An amazing, amazing phone call I got.
Now, what's that? What I want to ask about one of your stops, which was the then Hartford Whalers, which moved to Minnesota, I believe. Do you
No, they
think?
moved to Carolina.
Okay, I knew it was one of those. I couldn't remember which one. Uh,
Yeah,
do you think Hartford, where you played for, and it was obviously a good city, the good fan base? I'm sure you enjoyed it over there too. Um, do you think they'll ever get a hockey team again?
well, I was there a short time, played with many, many guys who spent a lot of years there, and everybody raved about how great it was to be a Hartford Whaler. Like I said, I got traded at the deadline. I believe I played 5 games there and then was part of the playoffs. So I really didn't get a chance to experience a full season in Hartford. But
Mhm.
everybody that I know and played with, they loved it. They absolutely loved playing there. So to answer your question, I'm not going to say it can't. It's not an option, but I think there's probably a lot of options out there. We're talking about Quebec City, Seattle. Got a team, but I would have to think they'd have to be in the conversation.
So you spent the most of your time, I believe, with the Kings, correct? Los Angeles Kings,
Yeah,
and you
that's right.
played, and you got to play with, I believe, at the end of his career or close to it, before he moved on to another team. Did you get to play with the Great One?
I did. I was there just under 2 years with Wayne. We went to the Stanley Cup final together with '93 King team, which was, obviously a highlight of my career. And yeah, so that was, growing up in Edmonton, him winning Stanley Cups in Edmonton, he became my idol very quickly. And then having the chance to play alongside him was just a dream come true. So I always say this about Wayne. He was a better human being and father than he was a hockey player. Just a genuine individual that his specialty was treating everybody equal, and that's what I instill in a lot of these young players I work with today. You can't go in to a dressing room or a forum and hang out with the cool or the best players, right? You got to treat everybody equal, and he made a point of making the fourth line feel as important as the first line.
Now, was he a leader in the locker room as the Great One, or
Oh,
was that?
100%. He was just you sat and watched and listened, and he wasn't a very vocal, loved to have fun, loved to tell jokes. Him and Marty McSorley would always be japping each other in the room. And but Wayne did his speaking on the ice and his preparation, his work ethic and practice, and he led by example. And the rest speaks for itself. But when he spoke, you listened, and it was just, he was the great one.
Now, obviously, he's now. I'm sure you've seen him because I know you still follow hockey. He's on TNT now as a broadcaster. Um, is that something that before you got into coaching and helping kids and all that, did you have any idea of possibly ever going into broadcasting? Did that ever enthusiast you?
I did a little bit. I did used to do a show with a guy named Michael Landsberg. It was a local show here called Off the Record. So I believe I did upwards of 90 episodes with Michael, and I really enjoyed it. I felt my passion was more on the ice and in the gym and working in that field more so than being an analyst on TV. I mean, I enjoyed every time I was on TV and got to talk about the sport that I love, and but yeah, I never really wanted to make that my career.
So take us through that 92, you said 92, 93 year, right? Was the cup year? Well, quote, yeah, you went for the cup, but you didn't win it, but it was around that year. Take us through that season. What was that season like to you guys, and were you guys projected to go to the Stanley Cup Finals?
Well, it was a year where Wayne hurt his back in the Olympics or the World Cup, I believe, on a cross check by Gary Suter, and Wayne missed a bunch of time, and so I think it was 15 games or so we lost him for,
Mm-hmm.
and then we weren't the favorite to go to the final, obviously. Playing Calgary first round, I would think Calgary was the favorite over us. They had a really, really strong team there. And we ended up beating them in 6 games. And then we played Vancouver the second round, which they were definitely the favorite. They lost us, but ended up going to the Stanley Cup final the following year, I believe. And we ended up beating them in 6 games. And then we ended up playing the Toronto Maple Leafs, which were definitely the favorite over us.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, Wayne said this, publicly that in Game 7 was his greatest NHL game ever. And we beat Toronto in Maple Leaf Gardens to go to the Stanley Cup final, and got beat by a team that had outstanding goaltending with Patrick Waugh, and we won the first game and lost the second game in overtime, then the next two in overtime. So it was a very tight series, could have went either way, but it was a great experience. Being a young kid from a trailer park outside of Edmonton growing up, being in a Stanley Cup final and through a playoff run like that was a memorable time for me that I'll never forget.
Now, another team you were with was the Mighty Ducks. I'm still a Duck fan, but growing up, I saw the movies.
Yep.
Now, obviously, the second one where they wore the older uniforms were in the 90s. I guess they wore that one. I know that one was after your time in the NHL, but uh, what do you remember most about? I'm sure you had to see that movie. So
Oh yeah, I've seen it a few times. I loved it.
yeah, yeah. So what? I mean, obviously, you guys heard about the first one. I mean, I'm sure you guys had to hear of the first one when it was around that time when you were come. I want to say close to retirement because I don't know when the first one was. I think that one was
Well,
90 or something.
yeah, I'm going to say this to you that
The second one was in 96 or 97, I think.
yeah, and I would say this to you, seeing the movies, and then when Michael Eisner, remember I was with LA, and then Michael Eisner was coming around during the playoffs with our owner Bruce McNall, and we were hearing that
Yeah.
Bruce had to give Michael permission because of the distance between the two cities. So Bruce got a large sum of money, I believe, from Disney to allow them to come into the league, which obviously he did. So when Michael was coming around, and then in the press conference, we had not been picked in the expansion draft yet.
Right.
But in the press conference, there was this big buzz about what's the team going to be called, and I'll never forget watching it when Michael Eisner at the press conference pulled out the jersey from the movie and said this team will be called the Anaheim Mighty Ducks. So to me, that was unbelievable because I was a big movie,
Yeah.
like I loved Emilio
Yep.
Estevez
That's what
in the
that was. Yep.
movie, and yeah, like it was part of who we were. And then we had lost, as you know, we'd lost the Stanley Cup final, and then that summer, Anaheim and Florida came in the expansion draft, and I was out for a run and came back home to find out that I was selected by Anaheim in the expansion draft, and was overly excited because a new team, Disney, just I all I had to do was move down the freeway. It wasn't far. So going from LA to Anaheim was a real cool thing because they were so popular when they came in. I believe at that point, Brian, the franchise sold more memorabilia, and
Oh yeah.
we were
Oh
signing
yeah.
after practices. I'll tell you this. They'd have tables lined up with
Mhm.
sticks and the duck mask, and we would sign for hours upon hours,
Mhm.
many, many times. And it was amazing how much of that stuff moved. But anyway, that was a great experience. Sadly, that's where my career ended. We were playing the New York Islanders,
Mhm.
and it was my fifth game of the year. And, or sorry, it was my first game with the Ducks. And I got hit, and unbeknownst to me, I blew my shoulder out. And
Mhm.
I ended up playing 5 more games and then had 2 major surgeries. And that was the end of my career. But my time with Anaheim was special because just the whole Disney thing, and obviously the new team, and we're very excited. I got a beautiful ring, Brian. That at that point we had broken the record for wins by an inaugural team, 33 wins, which was my number with Anaheim. And then obviously Vegas smashed that record. But yeah, it was a great experience, and stuff I'll never forget.
Now looking back on it, you honestly got to think that's funny that they named a team after the movie. I mean, obviously, I didn't think it was honestly a fictional team at first. I really didn't know that, and I had no idea.
Yeah, well, as you can see, I still have long hair. So when we were brought down, all the guys that got selected in the expansion draft, we all came from different teams. So when I went in to meet Tony Tavares and Jack Farrar, the president and the GM, they
Mhm.
said, "We got good news and bad news for you." And I looked exactly like I look right now. Anyways, they said, "There's your 3-year contract."
Mhm.
That's the good news. The bad news is working for Disney, you can't have long hair or facial hair. And I was
Ooh,
like, okay, because I came from LA and always had long hair, and that was
right.
kind of my thing. And so, anyways, when I came back for training camp, I looked like a Disney employee. And what's funny is, if you ever been to Disneyland or
I
Disney
have a
World,
long time ago though. Yeah, a long time ago,
yeah,
but I have been there.
so you got your employee button. Every employee has their name tag. Well, being working for Disney, all through training camp where we would eat at the restaurants and stuff, we wore the employee badge, which was I still got mine till this day. So
So
they call it cast member.
since you guys were owned then by Disney, do you think they're technically owned by Disney still
No,
as the Ducks?
no, they sold to
Oh,
I
they
forget
sold.
the gentleman's name. Yeah, because we went down for the 20-year anniversary. They brought the original team back, and that was a great weekend that they brought us back for, and got to see all the old guys, and we went out and dropped the puck for the home opener. So that was a real special time.
Who do you remember who was drafted with you since that in that expansion? Do you remember who
Oh
was
yeah,
drafted? Who you
a
played
lot of
with?
guys. So Robin Bawa came from San Jose. Randy Ladouceur came from. He was our captain. Came from Hartford. Sean Hill from Montreal, I believe. Um, Stu Grimson came from Chicago. Todd Ewan from Montreal. Ron Tugnett, I believe, came from Quebec. Guy Bear came from the New York Rangers or St. Louis Blues, I believe. So, I
Mhm.
mean, I could go on and on, but yeah, and Tony Semenoff from Edmonton Oilers. So we had a really, really good group. Well, we won 33 games that year.
Yeah, did you ever stop to think that that maybe like even though yeah you guys were a part of Disney, I mean you guys were going to go like did you guys ever sense as that pressure as a team like to go far, like have success, like the movie, like go far? Did you guys have
Well,
any of that going in the back of your head?
no, no. What the guys did, Jack Farrar and Tony Tavares and the staff there, Ron Wilson was the coach. They drafted a tough team. They drafted a lot of physical players, a lot of toughness,
Hmm.
which made us tough to play against.
Hmm.
And I was on a previous expansion team. I actually hold my own record in the NHL. I'm the only player to be selected in 3 expansion
There you
drafts.
go. That's a record
And
right there. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
so it
I've
was
heard of.
Minnesota, Ottawa, and Anaheim.
Hmm.
But anyway, we lost our first game to Detroit 7-3, I believe, and Detroit was a powerhouse back then.
Oh yeah.
But where I knew things were different than the Ottawa team is we went into New York and played the Rangers, Mark Messier and the Rangers, who were that year. I think no, the year later won the Stanley Cup, and
Yeah.
we ended up beating them 5-3. And that's when I sat back and went, "Wow, this team is pretty good." So it was different. It was a different feeling that I had in Ottawa when I was there. Just not to knock Ottawa, but we didn't win a lot of games there, and we ended up winning 33 with the Mighty Ducks.
Yeah. So tell us about your time, because obviously it was a cup of tea in Ottawa. What'd you think about that year in Ottawa that you spent? Did you enjoy playing for them? Because I see that's your profile pic on
Yeah,
Facebook here
I'm going to say
and
this.
Twitter.
It was a thrill to play in Canada. I always
Oh
wanted
yeah,
to
you're
be a
from there, right? You're from
Well,
there.
I'm from Edmonton, yeah. So
Yeah.
I always wanted to be an Oiler or a Leaf. Like playing in Canada is for a Canadian boy is special. So
Right.
playing in Ottawa, I loved it. It was a great feeling just being in a Canadian city. We played in the old Civic Center, which I think only sat 10,000 or 12,000 people. So that was different because I played junior against the Ottawa 67. So it was the same rink that we played in against them. So
Mm.
that was really unique. But yeah, it was. I wouldn't remember this, Brian. I went from LA to Ottawa on the expansion draft. Now playing with my idol Wayne Gretzky and having this great um, you know um, experience playing in LA with all the movie stars and Wayne and all
Right.
this sort of thing, and then going to Ottawa, an
Right.
expansion team that we had trouble winning games. It was a real different.
Tough.
But we were playing Toronto Maple Leafs and Maple Leaf Gardens, and it was the Christmas break. So at midnight that night, you couldn't trade over the Christmas break. Like there was a trade freeze. So after the game, I remember we lost 7-2 or something like that to the Leafs. And I
Mm.
got back to the hotel around 11 o'clock. And back then, we didn't have the cell phones and the social
Right.
media and all that.
Right.
And I walked into the hotel and they're like, "How do you feel?" And I said, "How do I feel about what?" They said, "You got traded back to the Kings tonight." And I was like, "Wow." Right. Like, and so anyway, that's the year we went to the Stanley Cup final. So I go from, a team that was really struggling to win games to back
Back
playing
to
with
yep. Back to the team.
my,
Yep.
yeah, and ended up going that year, 93, to the final. So that was, I say it was meant to be. And what was really nice about that, and this is out of Wayne's, Wayne said this. So when I got to the hotel in San Jose, my first game back, I ran into our owner, Bruce McNall, and he said, "Just so you know, Wayne made this trade. He wanted you back." I was obviously, his words were, I was a good dressing room guy and
Right.
character player and that sort of thing.
Right.
So that meant a lot to me that Wayne had actually spearheaded the trade because they traded actually one of my friends from LA, Bob Kadelsky, who was a 20 goal scorer for them. So that it meant something to go back there and be part of that year, and going to the Stanley Cup was special. But to hear from the greatest player that he wanted me back meant a lot to me.
Yeah. Speaking of, do you still talk to him to this day at all? Have
I,
you had a
I
chance to talk to him?
Yeah, he's done some wonderful things. I've reached out to him a couple times when some kids have been, terminally ill, and
Mhm.
Wayne's unbelievable, and he sent down a jersey. He would send a package to these kids, that were sadly dying in a hospital, and so those are the things, And if I ever see him, like if we see each other, it's like seeing him yesterday. So, he's always been there to be that ambassador for being the greatest player to ever play, right? And I always say this, he was the greatest on the ice, but it's tough to say there's anybody greater off the ice.
Right. Right. Exactly. So let's talk about your other stop that I see too was New Jersey Devils. We haven't
Yeah.
talked about them yet. Your time there, what was that experience like in playing for the Devils?
Well, I got traded from Hartford, where I was playing in Binghamton, their farm team in the American Hockey League, to New Jersey.
Mm.
So I didn't go to New Jersey at the time. I went down the highway in New York State to Utica, their farm team.
Mm.
So I played most of that year in Utica. But when I did get called up to New Jersey, I mean, it was just like, okay, the New Jersey Devils, another organization.
Right.
Brendan Shanahan.
Right.
John McClane, Pat Verbeek, another Fedosov was there, Kasatonov was there, from the Great Russian Miracle movie, if you will. So that was really cool. And yeah, I was only there a short time, but just a different color. I loved the green and red jerseys that they had, and so that was a good memory too. Like I wish I would have been there a little bit longer, but really enjoyed going up and I did a lot of fighting when I was up a short time with them. I think I had 4 or 5 fights, and
Mm.
not that just anyways, that's just part of my memory. But yeah, it was a nice stop.
So overall, you played 115 games in the NHL. That
Yeah.
honestly, that's not bad when you think about it. I mean, a lot of players have played fewer. That it's not that bad, not to be honest. But uh, what would you say in your time in the NHL? What would you say was your most successful year? Single wise, not team wise, but single wise. Because
Well, it would have been it would
obviously
have
team
been
wise, team wise was the Stanley Cup year, obviously. But
yeah.
what was your greatest season?
Well, it would have been the year before in LA. I played the whole season there. I didn't dress every game. One of the problems with my career, Brian, was that the way I played a real robust physical style. And I had some serious injuries,
Right,
shattered heel, broken back. I
right,
had
yeah,
12 surgeries. So, you know, I am blessed to have played 115 games. Barring all the injuries I had, I probably would have played a lot more.
right,
Two hand operations from fighting. And
right,
so, I look back and knowing how hard it is to play one game in the NHL and seeing all these kids that I work with and that go through major junior and up to the American Hockey League or the East Coast, and they're all praying to realize that dream of playing that one game. So I'm blessed to have donned an NHL jersey and played over 10 years on 6 NHL teams. And whether it's 1,000 games or 115, I look back and I'm just so blessed.
So I see you also scored a total of 4 goals out of your. Besides your first goal, what goal out of your 4 goals do you remember the most? Because obviously, I'm sure you got to keep the puck from your first goal, but what other out of those 4 goals was more memorable?
Well, that's a really good question because actually it wasn't my first goal. It was we were playing the Oilers in Edmonton. My mom was and family were at the game, and I was with Washington. And back then they had goal of the week. It was like one of the TV stations, CHCH goal of the week.
Mhm.
So anyway, I ended up getting the puck in Northlands Coliseum in my own end, and somehow went end to end and deked out Grant Fuhr, who was Hall of Fame with a great Oiler goalie.
Right,
And what's ironic is on my way down the ice, I beat Kevin Lowe. I had faked a slap shot, and he kind of tightened up, and I got around him. And Grant Fuhr came out to poke check me. So everything aligned to where I put the puck in the open net in front of my hometown and in front of my family. We ended up winning the game 8-2. So, we were a good team in Washington, but the Oilers were the mighty Oilers then, and it was
right.
unbelievable. So as much as I'd like to say my first goal on Eddie Belfour in Chicago Stadium, which was a big thrill, I have to point to that goal in Edmonton as my highlight of you know scoring out of my 4 goals that I scored.
Now, like you said, you were a very physical player, which got into a lot of penalty minutes and fighting minutes for you. You scored a total of 416 penalty minutes in your career. Uh, so basically, you're known as an enforcer. That's what I've been told. That's what I've been told by other players that have had that many penalty minutes. Uh, now, was that your part of your game to be that was to get into penalty box to just rough and tough the opponent? Was that your whole established play?
Well, I was a goal scorer growing up, and if you look through my career, in my OHL last year, I scored over 20 goals. In the American Hockey League, I was on a 50 goal pace,
Right,
25 goals in 41 games. So the fact that one year I had just under 200 my first year pro. in Binghamton. I just had under 200 minutes and did a lot of fighting. And when I had my exit meeting with the Washington Capitals, the late Brian Murray looked at me and said, "If you ever want to play here, you're going to have to fight more." And I was completely blown away because I thought, as a rookie coming out of junior, I fought all these tough guys in the American Hockey League, and I'm thinking, I got
Yeah,
to fight more. But being my dream, Brian,
you did it.
the next year I had 41 fights in 57 games and led the American Hockey League in penalty minutes with 360 minutes. So, as much, and I say this, as much as I dislike fighting because I didn't like it, it was not something that I enjoyed. It was not something that I look forward to, getting up in the morning knowing that I'm going to have 3 fights in a game. So, that's what I did. And I wanted, I was not going to not make the NHL. And then when I got there, then yeah, my role was to play on the fourth line and go out and fight their fourth liners and be a robust player. But like I said, I was a goal scorer all the way up through my career, and had protective instincts, I guess you would say, and you know, ended up being in this role that I got 10 years of pro hockey out of it.
So it's a two-part question. I know you didn't want to fight, but obviously that's what you had to do, like the guy told you, and you had to do it anyway. So it's a two-part question. Who out of all your fights you had, which one was most memorable? And the second part is, it out of all the people you did not get a chance to fight, playing wise, in your time, who would you have liked to have fought?
Okay, great question. So the most memorable fight I'm going to say was probably against the toughest guy in the league at the time was Dave Brown in the Spectrum in Philadelphia. I was with Washington,
Mhm.
and I was a nervous wreck, but I survived. And and I'm going to say this, that even though I didn't want to, if I would have dropped the gloves of the late Bob Probert, who was arguably the best fighter and toughest man over longevity of a career, would have been something that didn't want to do. But if you say, hey, what's funny is every one of the first questions people ask me, ever fight Probert, right? And I never did. And if I had to say that there's one guy that you would have liked to just hung on and pr- prayed you didn't get hurt, would have been Bob Probert. But it's funny, Bob and I did a movie together after our careers were over called The Love Guru, a Mike Myers hockey movie where the Leafs won the Stanley Cup.
Mhm.
And Bobby ended up living with me during the shoot. So he was with me, I think, about 6 months. So what he would do is go home on the weekends to Danny, his wife, and his kids. And then he would stay with me during the week when we would shoot the movie. So I got to know this guy over a period of time. What a wonderful, wonderful man. And sad we lost him early, and heard a lot of great stories that some I share, some I don't. And I was blessed to spend some valuable time with this guy, but he would have been the guy.
So, I I know it's a brutal game, and I know crap happens, like people getting cut all the time and all that. Um, did you ever witness anything brutal like that on the ice? Because I know recently, and even though this was like college, God bless his soul, what happened? I'm sure you heard about this with the kid losing his life because of the skate up to his neck.
Yeah.
Oh, did you know? Did you ever witness anything graphic to that nature
Well,
where you thought something was seriously going to happen?
well, I played with Clint Malarchuk in Washington when he got traded to Buffalo. That happened to him with the Buffalo Sabres. Now, I wasn't on the ice, I wasn't in the building because he was in. But seeing a former teammate go through that was just horrific. That if that doctor wasn't at that gate, Brian, Clint would have died on that ice. And I've seen some horrible injuries, like bones sticking out of skin. Like, hockey is a tough game, like football, like rugby. A lot of these games are tough games. So yeah, I saw some major stuff over my career. A guy taking a slap shot in the mouth and losing, is basically his mouth blown up. Like it's like, teeth all over the place and awful, awful stuff. So, nothing like the boy that sadly died with the jugular vein getting cut, but I've seen some bad accidents in hockey for
Now,
sure.
like you said, you obviously you had that 1 year where you played all the games, and a full season is 82 games. Do you think that's too much in a season to play?
No,
Do you think they will cut the season?
no, no. The guys, like even back when I played, we take care of ourselves. Your job is to sleep, eat properly, and be ready to perform. No different than a rock band going out and playing 6 nights in a row, or no different than, many different industries.
Right.
And as long as you're taking care of yourself, as long as you're eating properly and resting, obviously it's a rough game, the bumps and bruises, when guys miss games and, they got, something that they can't play, then that's when they're on the injured reserve. But no, there's 82 games is fine.
Now, obviously, with the teams you played for, you got to play in a division quite a bit. So, how rough and tough were some of your divisions that you played up against?
Well, that's a very good question. So, playing in Washington, games with Philly were like it was a war. There
Mhm.
was a history there of, and the New York Rangers. I remember going into Madison Square Gardens and fighting Rudy Postcheck twice, and the place going crazy, and so there was rivalries in every division. Then I go to LA, and you got Calgary and Edmonton. We got Gretzky now in LA, and we're playing the Oilers. Well, that was heated. That was really heated, and so yeah, the rivalries within the divisions are really, it's for very intense and a lot of fun to play, and obviously for the home crowd, it's a different vibe than a team coming in from the other conference or the other side, because it's just the rivalries are great.
So, like you said earlier, unfortunately, you had to end your career on 2 surgeries.
Yeah.
Um, I know obviously that's not how you wanted your career to ultimately end, but you knew it had to happen. Do you think that you knew right away, though, like when you had the first operation, that your career was over, or do you think you could have made it if you didn't have that second operation?
Well, what happened after my first operation, I had basically reconstructive surgery on my left shoulder, and when I went through the rehab process and supposed to be feeling good to come back, I think we're talking 6 or 7 months.
Yeah.
And I came back the next year for training camp, and my second shift of training camp, I went to reach for a puck, and all of a sudden, the sharp pain was just like, whoa. So, anyways, that went on for a bit, and they did more rehab. And then the doctor who operated on me said, you know what, I'm going to go in arthroscopic surgery and have a look.
Mhm.
So he went in and shaved some scar tissue, Brian, and kind of cleaned it up. And then I did more rehab, and then I came back towards the end of the year, and the pain was still there. And that's when the doctor said, you know what, with the style of game you play, it's going to be really difficult to continue if after 2 surgeries and me basically reconstructing your shoulder, if you still have that pain, it's going to be difficult for you to continue. And I sat in my stall. I'll never forget it. It was in the pond in Anaheim. And I sat there in disbelief. I was 27 years old, and he's telling me that my career was over. And that was it. That was 1995. I'd gotten bought out of my third year of my contract, and I was done hockey.
So, besides the movie you were in, uh, what would you say was your favorite movie out of them all? I'm going to name the two. You already know one. We talked about it, The Ducks, and then briefly you talked about the other one, Miracle on Ice, with the Russian and U.S. team. So out of those 2 movies, and you can include yours in there. You can be biased. I don't care. You can include yours in there. What movie to you was the best?
By far, the miracle, the true story of Herb Brooks, the kids from the U.S. And I'm going to say this, playing with Dave Christian, Dave Silk, I played with a whole bunch of these guys from both sides, the Russians and the U.S. team. And I just find every time I watch it, it's an amazing, gives you chills. It gives you chills how these amateurs could go out and beat the team that was beating the NHL superstars. And, like Herb said in the movie, out of 10 games, they'll beat us 9 times, but tonight they're not beating us, and they didn't. That's just an amazing story. And there's another sad story. Herb Brooks coming home from a golf tournament and sadly got into a car accident. His life was ended shortly.
That was the most recent one that died, correct? I heard somebody else had died from that team too. Can't think.
Yeah, no, Herb died years ago. Well, I know that the guy who played O'Callahan, the actor, committed suicide. There's a whole bunch of things out of there, but yeah, that was to me the best hockey movie ever. True story,
Did
and
they actually use Al Michaels' voice in that?
oh yeah,
They have
yeah, yeah,
somebody
yeah.
who played, or did they actually have somebody who played
No,
as?
no, no, no. It's my Al Michaels. They used the real. They used the real footage, I believe.
I see. I never had a chance to watch that movie, so that's why.
Oh,
That's why
yeah,
I
you
asked.
gotta. If you're a hockey fan, which it sounds like you are, you need to watch that movie.
So, besides the alumni game that you said you had with the 20-year with the Ducks, um, have you been invited to any of the other team alums like the L.A., Ottawa, New Jersey, any other teams?
Well, yeah, you get invited to different functions, and you know, um, being an alumni player, we I would go to Ottawa, sit in the alumni box, and stuff like that. So when you can do it in our busy schedules, I love to do it. But it's hard to travel for me from Toronto to LA just to do an alumni event unless it's something that's going to be special or what have you. But I do go to Ottawa to the golf tournaments and spend time there. And I plan to try to hit Washington and some of my old teams that I haven't been to an alumni event yet, just to go and see my old teammates and stuff because that's special.
Obviously, you went around to a lot of different arenas and a lot of different fan bases that you've been a part of. Where would you say was the most difficult to play?
Oh, Chicago Stadium. The funnest, but the most difficult. Just a smaller rink, and they always had big, tough teams in there, and it was a exciting place to play. I had success in Chicago, but it was I scored 2 of my 4 goals in Chicago Stadium, but it was a tough, tough place to play, and very there was you could see a rat down in the dressing room, and I it's true as I'm sitting here like you're down in the basement. You walked upstairs to get out to the stadium ice, and there's a whole bunch of different things. The organ there, but that and Boston Gardens was the old Boston Gardens was a tough place to play. One of the hardest hits I ever took was from Cam Neely in that arena, and yeah. But those are a couple that were exciting to play, but very difficult to play.
Now I know the Bolts were an expansion team in '93, and you retired in '95. Did you have a chance to play for the Bolts before they got not? I mean, play against. Sorry, play against
Yeah, so that
the
that, that
Bolts.
was the year that I was selected by Ottawa in the expansion draft, and they had us play Tampa Bay, the 2 expansion teams. We played, I think, 3 games into the season, so that was a big thing playing, the other expansion team. And so yes, I played against Tampa, and then I played them later in my career. But yeah, they were in the expansion draft with Ottawa.
So now let's talk a little current hockey, which I'm sure you still follow up on. The
Yeah,
playoffs are coming very quickly.
yeah,
Uh, give us your top 8 teams in each league that will make the playoffs. So I think it's a total of 16 teams. So
yeah.
for in each league, give
Each
me the eight. Give me the 8 teams in each league that will make it.
well, each conference is, I'd have to look at the standings, but you got in the East, you're gonna have Pittsburgh, Washington, Tampa Bay, Carolina, the Leafs, the New York Rangers, Boston is a wild card team right now.
Hmm.
I'm not sure what if I've missed any there, but in the other side, Minnesota, Edmonton, the Kings are still in there. Calgary's in there. Um, you've got St. Louis is in there. So these teams are all there. I think are going to make it. I think if you looked at the standings, Brian, and see the wild card teams, I think it's all going to stay pretty much the way it is. But yeah, it's going to be exciting because the thing about the playoffs today is you can be the wild card team and knock off the first place team,
Yeah.
right? Because the parity it's just so close. All the teams are so close now, and anybody can win.
Any of those teams that you can possibly see being a wild card that nobody's talking about that can go far in the playoffs?
The Edmonton Oilers, I believe, with the two best players, or arguably the two best players in the world, if they find their mojo, getting Evander Kane was a big thing. They got to get goaltending, but I think the Oilers could surprise a lot of people just because they are that talented. I also look at Minnesota Wild. I think they're a team with getting Marc-Andre Fleury. Their goaltending solid now with Cam Talbot, and they could be very difficult also. But you got to go through the champions of Tampa Bay, who probably are the deepest team still, and they're going to be tough to beat.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you that. Can you see them? I know it's hard to repeat, and they did, and it's definitely hard to triple peat. Do you think they will ultimately?
Yeah. If I had to say right now, who's the favorite to win the cup? You got to look at them because when you win, you know how to win. And they're good enough. They got the best goalie, they got the best D core, and arguably the best forward core, right? So from top to bottom, they still are the deepest team in the NHL. Now you got teams sneaking up on them like Carolina, and the Leafs look really good this year, and the
And
Rangers
the
are playing
Panthers.
well. Panthers, yeah, I didn't even mention the Panthers, and they're the best team in the league right now. So shame on me for that. And they're having a heck of a year. So again, you got to get through the champs. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all unfolds.
Yeah, don't you find it quite funny? I mean, Coop, who's a lawyer, who was an ex-lawyer, I mean, he came out of nowhere. I never even heard of the dude. And you would think most coaches are former, players or former coaches or whatever that, that were in the league before. He took it on to a new level. Like I never even heard of the dude and look what he's done. Like
Well, yeah, I mean, he won at every level. Like if you look at his career, he went up through college hockey, I believe it was, and then won in the minors, and
yeah.
you can see that he's well liked, he's well educated, and he's really smart. And sometimes, I look at Kyle Dubas in Toronto, similar to Cooper. Kyle Dubas is a bright, bright guy, and as much as he takes criticism for the analytics and all that. I think he's going to bring a Stanley Cup with Brendan Shanahan to Toronto. But when you look at Cooper and what they've done there, they just know how to win, and they're going to be, they're the favorites again. Even though Florida's ahead of them in the schedule and or in the standings and all this, I still believe Tampa's the team that you got to go through.
So besides the rivalry going on between Ovechkin and Crosby's, they're on the tail slide of their careers. They're almost done. What two players do you see in this day and age that can have that sort of rivalry like those two have?
Well, I think it's Connor McDavid and Austin Matthews. I think they're the two superstars now, and Draisaitl too. I mean, he's in that mix. But as far as a rivalry right now, who's the best player in the world? And with Austin Matthews, I think he's got 58 goals. I think they're the two that you're going, okay, they're the Crosby and Ovechkin of the last decade, if you will. So Austin Matthews has completely come into his own this year. Without the COVID year, he would have scored 50 goals. So he is really the new superstar goal scorer in the NHL, and he's kind of taken that role over from Ovechkin. And when you look at Connor McDavid, more the assist guy, has kind of picked that up from Sidney Crosby. So to me, they're the two that who's the best in the world.
I'm going to put you on the spot here, okay? Give me your from the time you were drafted, which is 84. Give me your top till now, your top 5 NHL players.
Well, number one Gretzky, number two
That's
Mario Lemieux,
obvious. Yeah, that's
yeah,
obvious.
number two Lemieux. Um, you know, I gotta say number three, Connor McDavid. You know, just because he hasn't done as much as Wayne or Mario, but I think he. I'll say this, and as great as Wayne was and Mario was, nobody does what Connor McDavid does. His speed, everything at top speed. He's probably the best talented guy just because of the way he skates to ever play the game. So I'd put Connor at number three, Crosby at number four, and it would be wrong for me not to add Bobby Orr in there because in the argument of who was the greatest of all time, Bobby was the greatest of his era, Wayne of his era.
Right.
You can't compare the two. You can't compare Wayne Gretzky to Connor McDavid right now because Wayne could never skate like that, right? So those would be my top five, and I missed a whole bunch of great players: Steve Yzerman, Dale Hawerchuk, the great Montreal Canadiens, Guy Lafleur, and all them. But those would be my top five.
Now, I never wore them because I never had an inspiration to play the sport. But how difficult is it, honestly, to play your sport with all that gear? I mean, that's tons of weight on you. How difficult is it to skate and play in that attire?
Um, it would be really hard for someone who's never done it. But growing up with it, you just you put it on and you go out, and it's like getting in your car and driving. It's not that big a deal. Like I sit here and go, wow, you went out and you were just so accustomed to wearing all this equipment and skates and a stick in your hand. And so yeah, I mean it's a question that we become accustomed to it, but I do know this: when you take a person who's never played hockey or has never put gear on, they're like, wow, like the uncomfort that they would have would be, yeah, it would be big time. But growing up with it, there was no issue.
Now, obviously, you spent most of your time in the penalty box, so I got to ask you now: did you have any grudges with the referees in your playing days?
Um, it's funny. I didn't. I got into it one time with Paul Stewart, the referee. He's no longer reffing, but Paul was a tough guy when he played. And I remember one night in LA, I think it was. Yeah, I got into it with him just because I didn't like one of the things he did, and so I ended up getting a misconduct and getting kicked out. But I wasn't that guy that disrespected the referees. I respected all of them, and I think it was something Paul said to me, and so I kind of mouthed back at him, and but I was not the guy to take it to. I couldn't afford to take an unsportsmanlike conduct and put our team down shorthanded. That would not have been good for me.
So, you were what, primarily right wing, I think.
That's right. Yeah, played a little bit of left wing, but mostly most of my career was right
Now,
wing.
obviously, I know hockey. I mean, I watch it, and it's one of my favorite sports. But I'm still confused. I'm still quite confused on the positions. I know I get what defensemen do and what goalies do, obviously. But what is the right wing and left wing's job? What do they have?
Yeah, it's the easiest job in hockey, Brian. What you do is, in your own zone, you got to get the puck out if it comes along your boards. Your job is not to lose the puck in your own end. If it goes in the other corner, you go down in the middle of the ice and help out there. So you're basically going up and down the ice, in a little bit, over a little bit. Obviously, if you're the first guy back, you're playing the center position. You got to pick up your center's position. So you do need to know what to do as a centerman. But anybody to tell you being a winger in hockey is the easiest job. Toughest is goalie. Second toughest to me is being a defenseman. I would not want to be being chased like by a guy like me who was just coming in to hit you really hard, and you got to go back and get the puck. That's a tough position to be playing, especially with the size of the guys today.
Now, there's a lot of talk about maybe wanting to change the game. Do you feel, since you played it, do you feel like the game needs to be changed, or do you think they should keep it the way it is?
I love it now. I love the fact that it's speed, it's skill. The clutching and grabbing's gone. When I played, I think the game is the best it's ever been. Fighting's down. We don't need to see the fighting. A component of, the violence doesn't need to be in there. And I love it. I love watching the skill. And back when I played, the fourth line was all fighters. Today, the fourth line today could be a second line from when I played. So the skill from top to bottom is really, really exciting.
So, what team today do you think has the most lines, shall I say? Because obviously, most teams have their best line being the first line, obviously, then
Yeah.
second, not far behind. So, which team in the AHL do you think has the complete set?
Yeah, I think the deepest teams, are pretty Florida, Tampa Bay. Toronto's got a deep team. Some would question their defense and their goaltending. You look at Minnesota's really deep from top to bottom, but Carolina, like there's so many good teams now. Like Carolina, coached by Rob Brindamore, is one of the best teams in the NHL, and they just because of where they are and they're not have the big superstars, they don't get talked about a lot. But they're a deep, deep team too. They could win the Stanley Cup, right? And we haven't even talked about the New York Rangers and this team, but there's so many good teams from top to bottom. But I still go back to Tampa Bay are the champs. To me, they're still the best defense core in the league. They got the best goalie in the league, and they arguably got the best depth talent in the league up on forward.
Now, obviously, we had the bubble season 2 years ago. Thank God that's behind us. Now, how would you have fared in the bubble like these players have? How tough would it have been for you?
Um, I don't think it would have been tough for me because I love the game so much, and I wasn't, you know, I just loved being in pro hockey, whether it was the minors or the NHL. So for me to have to live in a hotel and eat meals and, the fact that I was living out my dream, I know it affected a lot of guys and I'm not, slighting them, but when this is your dream and this is, what you signed up for, it wouldn't have mattered. Like to me, I thought about that a lot too, is how would I have reacted to that? But I would have been good to go.
And lastly, I'm going to ask you, I don't, it's normally a two-part question, but we already got through what you tell the kids at the beginning. But the last question I have to you is define your career in one word.
I'm going to say in one word, probably my favorite word, I'm going to say respectful. I respected all my teammates. I respected all my coaches, all my owners, all my opponents, and I respected the game. And, just I want to think that I'm a respectful person today. I made a lot of mistakes, like we all do. I look back
Right.
and go,
Right.
I wish I could have done that different or this different, but I do live my life now with respect, and that's I've always I was brought up to be respectful and show respect and be kind, and so that's the way I would like to think that who I was and who I am today is a kind, respectful person.
Well, I couldn't have said anything better. I thank you again the second time. This time it was even better because we got to do a video. Last time I think it was just
Yeah,
over phone.
I think so. Yes.
But it was fun. Thank you.
Yeah, Brian,
Um,
thank you again for
I'm
having me, and it was great spending the
definitely
last hour with you.
again, you're more than welcome to come on anytime. I said that the last time, and I truly do
Yeah,
mean it. I'll stay in
yeah,
touch with you. Still, we'll talk about the season, etc. I'll still keep in touch. But yeah, feel free, please. After we get off here, I'll send you the full episode. You can share
yeah.
that. You can, and we'll go from there. And if you know anybody, please send them my way. If you
I
know any
will.
former players, send them my way. Always looking for interviews. So I'd
Well,
appreciate
it's like this. When you ask me to do this, I see you working hard and kind of living your dream of being what you're doing, and that's why I enjoy doing this with guys like you because it's passionate for you, and I'm it's about giving back, and not that you need me to give back. You asked me to do this, and I said, you know what, I want to do it because I number one enjoy it, and you know
right.
what, to see you enjoy it, and I've watched some of your other podcasts. It makes me happy to see that this is works for you. So thank you because you made my night.
Definitely, same. I'm glad I made your night. So it was awesome. Thank you again. I'll send you the episode. So this
Thanks so
concludes
much, Brian.
episode number 97 with Jim Thomson. You all have a good night. Take care, all right? I'll be texting you.
Thank you. Bye.
No problem. All right. Are you winning?